It's all good. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of Sunday Safe Spaces. Today, we'll be talking about the benefits of inclusive workspaces. Uh, it's myself, Wesley Hamilton, and my host, April. She's not available at the moment, but she will jump on and kind of get a part of this conversation. We do have a special guest with us who goes by Libby, and you'll get to learn more about her and what she's doing and the reason why she can bring value to this conversation. I think that it is a really great conversation to have as we move into the end of the year. You just have a lot of awareness around disability that's happening. Disability Awareness Pride Month, like Disability Employment Awareness Month is coming up, Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month, International Disability Day. I think that is in December. So you just have a lot of awareness. And so to be more knowledgeable of the benefits of having disability just in your space, that's what we're trying to bring. We're trying to bring that value to you. And so, yeah. Well, Libby, thank you for joining us today on Sunday Safe Spaces. I really appreciate you taking out some time to just have a conversation. I'm excited. I heard that you were part of the Disability Pride event yesterday in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes. The
Hey.
good old black and gold city.
So tell us about that. Like, what is your involvement there?
So I am an individual. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Libby. I'm an Asian woman wearing a blue top with flowers on it, and with short black hair. And the background is I am in my bedroom, leaning against my bed with lavender purple sheets on it.
Oh, that's well, thank you for that, Libby.
I am so I've been a disability advocate and activist my entire life. I've lived with disability as part of my narrative my whole life. As I was born with a birth defect called spina bifida, and I have learned to navigate the world um, through the eyes as a disability, as somebody with a disability. And so I've learned so many different things and had the opportunity to participate in so many different events like Disability Pride. Disability Pride is typically celebrated in July, on the 26th of July,
Hmm.
every year, because that is the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act um, in 1990. So I have lived with disability all around me, and it's something to be celebrated and very much a part of one's identity. And it's important to recognize that disability pride um, and self awareness and self love and self acknowledgement don't always sometimes line up together, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for just kind of giving us that overview of how you feel about disability pride. And I mean, I love it because for you, you've experienced disability your whole life, as you've shared. And so, for anyone that has that true understanding, then yeah, the alignment. Because I've only been in my wheelchair going on 12 years now. So I really talk from living both worlds and having a certain perspective before my disability. So I'm learning from you every day, Libby. And I'm grateful to even have this conversation. And anyone that's missing April right now, just know April will be coming soon. She's having some technical difficulties, and that's all good. So, Libby, let's kind of go into what we're really talking about today is the
Hmm.
benefits of inclusive workspaces, and what's your background in workspaces since you've had a disability your whole life, and what do you feel that can be improved? Just let's dive right in.
Dive right in. Okay, so I have worked in many spaces um, since graduating college and then graduating graduate school. I've worked in tech spaces. I've worked in nonprofit spaces. Um, I've worked in um, grassroots spaces, and it my experience with inclusion and with feeling like my disability is honored, um, but also gives me the opportunity to be who I am and not just as a disabled person,
Hmm.
um, has ebbed and flowed throughout my experiences. And I think that just shows how far we've come as a world in accepting disability and integrating it into society or into how society functions. Um, but we still have so far to go to be truly inclusive and truly disability aware.
Hmm. Well, I like that you shared the importance of who you are outside of your disability. Because I think sometimes when people are trying to include disability, they just forget everything else. And who we are, is so much more. The identity that is inside of you isn't just about the things that represent you on the outside. And it is very important to hone into those intersections. So, April, are you there?
She is frozen.
Is she still frozen? See, April's gonna have her technical difficulty. Me and Libby, welcome to the West and Libby show
So,
today. We're talking about inclusive workspaces and the benefits of those. And so I like the way that you shared, and I don't know if uh, at least when I'm hearing you, because you've had your disability your whole life, you've learned how to bring your true self into a space. And so and then of course, through the process of like college, and like I was already out of school by the time I acquired mine. So, um, you really have like a great experience in a lot of different sectors and really making them become even more inclusive. Because I'm sure, like you've shared too, you're an advocate, right? Like, and being an advocate means that you go into spaces that might not be inclusive, and hope that just being present creates change. Um, so I do want to share, like for me, the importance of it is that, like my experience in a workspace, like I'm in entrepreneurship now and philanthropy, as a lot of people know, but I had to kind of lean into that because my experiences in a workspace after I acquired my disability was uncomfortable. It wasn't something that was welcoming, and the reason why is because I was working before my injury and went back to work. And my job that I was at wasn't really equipped or set up for people with disabilities. There wasn't anyone with a disability on the team or on the floor or maybe even in the building. So yes, it did have access because it was one of those type of commercial buildings, business. It was like a call center type of job. So um, but I just remember going back to work a few months later and trying to go back and work 8 hours a day and like just do the able body stuff, right?
mhm.
And and again, there wasn't any. there wasn't any conversations. There wasn't like, let me put you, let's understand like what you need or what you want. Like it was like, oh, let's just, they believe that I should be set up and life goes on. And so I was pressured into that life goes on mindset to the point
Yeah.
where it went from 8 hours to 6 hours to 4 hours to however I can get there. And then it was like, up, now we're going to offer you a severance because we can't really utilize you. And then this was all before the pandemic where everyone went home to work from home. But those were even questions that I had, like, could I work from home? Could it, as I go through rehab and finding myself and understanding this new life, and it just wasn't equipped for that. And I found myself really getting into that model of, you know, how does the other workspaces around me look at me and how do they accept me? And instead of kind of going and tapping into those and figuring it out like I've heard you do, I kind of just went down the other route, like, let me just hit up the government. Like, obviously I just got, this is what I have to do, right? Like, I can't be independent based off of my experience. Like, my experience made me feel like there's not going to be understanding, there's not going to be people there. Like, again, it was accessible,
Mhm.
but I mean, I remember my first fall was trying to use the restroom there, and it's
Yeah.
like, and nobody, like, I didn't want nobody to help me,
Yeah.
right? Like, I did,
Yeah.
but it was like there wasn't anyone that came to check on me, nothing, and or there wasn't anything in the bathroom where I could alert someone to say, "Hey, I have failed. I do need assistance." And I mean, that was, that brought a little bit of fear into me going into a workspace moving forward.
Yeah. I think what we also have, an obviously, from what I'm hearing you say, Wes, we also have a very prevalent um epidemic of ableism in our society. And that goes hand in hand with inclusivity, because individuals, like in the workplace, make assumptions about individuals who have disabilities and what they can and cannot do. And also, that in that same respect, of what is available to them to help support them in the workplace.
Mm,
And that, I think, is something that, while the ADA has improved, we still also have a long way to go, to make spaces entirely accessible and entirely equal.
yeah, I like that I mean, all of it was great, but I think what I really really liked was just the fact of the acknowledgement that there is things that are happening, but there's so much work to still be done. And I think the identity factor comes into it with just the intersectionality that comes within disability. And if other groups, races, religions, or things aren't being recognized or accepted, then certain individuals that identify with that when they go into spaces don't see themselves, regardless of what group they represent. And I think that then when the disability, so it's a lot of layers, right? Like,
Yes,
and it's a
it's
lot.
a multi-layered, multifaceted situation that we as a population and as individuals are constantly battling against.
Mm,
But again, I think what's important is celebrating the small wins,
mm,
while still also recognizing how far we have to go. Because there's wonderful things when a workplace is inclusive, um, that can help an individual thrive and be fully successful and integrated into the workplace, whether that is in a virtual environment or a physical workspace. like an office. I have had the opportunity to work in many spaces of those spaces. I in my previous role, I was in a physical workspace office that was fully accessible and in had many different features to meet different people with different abilities and different needs, um, and to help support them. And then I went into in my new role now. I'm in the virtual space
Hmm.
where I work with my coworkers and superiors in the virtual environment while I'm in my own environment in the background.
I love that. And I think that's where value comes in, meeting people where they are. Like for me, I think it was more exhausting. For anyone I don't know, before we got on the call, we were just talking about like experiences in the rain.
Yeah.
Experiences in the rain when you're in a wheelchair or just have a disability and what that could do. And I remember my at this job, like my first experience getting soaking wet was trying to get off of work, and I got off of work. It was pouring down rain. I remember just my friend pushing me down this ramp, and like all the rain just came and just got soaking wet, and that was my first experience. And so I'm only sharing that because sometimes even individuals with disabilities, right, like will sacrifice the outside environments and the barriers that come with it, whether it's weather, getting soaking wet to make it on time, or just to be present, snow, cold, whatever. Your
Yeah.
body temperature doesn't regulate the same, but you're still trying to be out there. And so I share that because there's all these other issues that can
Yeah.
come in when you don't meet a person where they at. But like, see me 50-50. Let me choose
Yes.
the days, right? Like, let me do a virtual environment and a work environment. Let me be present where people can see me in the best way that I can come. It could be a day that my body doesn't feel the best, but just creating space for that. But no, I can still be effective at work or in a home environment. It's important. I think we got April back on here.
Yes.
Yeah, what's up, April?
I need the her to send me a new laptop because it's ends.
you
But
know,
Wes, thanks for your technical expertise. I did so
I'm here all week. So I got you however you need me, and me and Libby have had an amazing conversation. When it comes to inclusivity, the awareness, we started talking more about disability and the workspaces. I shared a couple experiences, and Libby has too. But what she did share was the importance of celebrating the small wins. And let me take my little alerts off of here. But she was, just sharing, celebrate the small wins that are happening within inclusivity in these workspaces, as we share our experiences of the barriers and things. So just kind of giving you that overview. And what's your, take on, inclusivity in workspaces? And do you have any, stories you like to share, April?
yeah, you know, I've been doing like 3 days of kind of immersive training and this centered around equity. And we talk so much about it and how do we show it? Like, what does it look like? And inclusivity is like a verb, like you can do it. It's an action that can happen. So I appreciate hearing you say, Libby, celebrate those small wins. And it can look something so simple like, hey, what access do you need to come into my space? Do you need a ramp? Do you need gluten-free muffins? Do you need water? You know what I mean? It's those little things that make us feel seen. It makes us feel warm and we know that we're seen. And why does it have to be skewed in any direction? You know, like, why would I not ask every individual that's coming into my space what I can do? It's that radical hospitality. What can I do to make things comfortable for you? Because I sense that when you're comfortable, you're at ease, and then you can work in your fullest capacity of whatever it is. Um, and I find, like, when you're talking about this epidemic of ableism, it's so true, right? Because we don't have universal design in a lot of spaces, and a lot of times it's an afterthought. And I really appreciated you in the beginning, Libby, um, giving us a visual, right? Because for our brothers and sisters who are visually impaired in some type of way, it's important to be able to say, like, this is what this looks like if you can envision it in your mind. And living here in Pittsburgh, I have really encountered so much separatism, in the sense, like, you walk in a room, and Wes, I know you've done it, Libby, I know you've done it, and you're the only, right?
Mhm.
You're the only person of color. You're the only person, for the two of you, in a wheelchair. You're the only, Libby and I, female. You know what I mean? Wes, you've been the only Black male in a space. And why does it have to be an anomaly? You know, why does it have to be like, ooh, you know, I'm going to, you know, put a microscope on you? Or why are expectations lowered because of me looking different? And I think that was a real big thing for me. And that's having this conversation. Why are expectations lowered for anyone who comes into a space that's different? And if we capitalize on each other's strengths and support them, I think that makes the workspace even so much more rich. Um, you know, I know some people. I've had friends, you know, in college and even in a workspace where they might be on the spectrum, like Asperger's, autism, or whatever. Regardless of that, like, their math skills were super, super duper sharper than mine. So it would be better to have them than in the accounting department, you know, on the engineering side, than me. And that's that part of ableism. Just because in your mind's eye that you think someone, because they're able-bodied and seemingly their mental health is at a standard that you've created that should be considered normal, how does that, you know, translate into having a diverse workplace, an equitable workplace? And how does that translate to them not being able to do an amazing job at what they do?
Mm.
Well, and I think too, April, to go off your point, is there's, in a way, with the assumptions that we make of individuals and the lowered bar that we set them at for expectations, there's an assumption that I can't because of my disability.
Right.
But again, focusing on a person's strengths can help them succeed and can help them um, understand the various facets to the workplace,
Right.
in the different areas that help make it function. And I think that it's important to recognize that there are blind spots
Mm.
everywhere, and that individuals who, just because you think you know their situation, you don't.
There you go. That, ooh, amen, Libby. Quote. We always gotta have a quote, Libby. That's a quote right there. You don't.
And there's this assumption that you think that you can have the knowledge and information that about the individual just by looking at them.
That's, you know, I feel like when you say that, Libby, at least the way I think about it is how individuals put their thoughts of how they could see themselves in that situation on that person. So like that, I can't, is someone looking at someone and like, again, personal experience, I use myself, how someone can come up to me and say, man, I don't know how you can do it in a wheelchair. I know I couldn't do it. That for me is, well, if that's your thought process already from just coming up and talking to me, or just it could be a random stranger most of the time.
Yeah.
Where do you work? Are you at a top of a leadership chain? Because your mindset is the reason why it's not inclusive down below.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so again, like, I just wanted to share that because you're looking, and I don't feel like I couldn't do it. Like, I'm living my life. And if you took time to hear my story and what my strengths are, as Libby said, then you could see how valuable I can be even to you in so many ways. And instead that I can't because my limitations are physical, is something that is a barrier for so many people, because it's really not us that's thinking that we can't, it's someone else projecting it on us. And then once it's projected on us, then you have a community of people that don't think they can go above and beyond, because there's so many people that's projected their own limitations on you. And it comes through conversation a lot of times.
Right.
Well, what's really interesting is there is also the epidemic of unemployment among individuals with disabilities because of the lack of inclusive workplaces. And that is so prevalent and so disheartening and disappointing to live in such a developed country that has money coming out of its ears and it not be recognized as something that's important and that brings value and brings the person into an environment that they want to participate in and want to feel like they can bring what they have to the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a key thing. Bring what they have to the table. And again, it's because we're welcoming everybody into the space. And, Wes, I liked how you were talking about that top person, right? That top executive, that CEO or whoever that person is. Be inquisitive, ask questions. And it's okay. First of all, we all have a level of grace, right? So if I come in and I ask a question, I'm going to give an example. Like, you both are wheelchair users, right? Wes educated us. We had like a great conversation one time. When I say Wes, me, Marissa in the background, on like, listen, identify and understand the differences in wheelchair users. My spinal cord injury is different than Libby while you're in a wheelchair, than different than somebody else. And me not being a wheelchair user, not having that experience, I want to know more. Like, I'm listening and I'm hearing, please share with me. And if I ask a question that I'm, that's ignorant, one, ignorance means that you don't know something. And instead of, Wes judging or condemning me, he's like, let me tell you, let me teach you. And then I'm going to constantly learn. And that's what I think we as human beings need to do. Constantly learn. So let me, so I'll be like, Libby, what is your strength? What can you bring to the table? What do you want to bring to the table? Do you want to build a new table, Libby? I think that employers can ask, what do you want to bring? Because ultimately it's about value. And as people, we exchange and we barter our value. I went to school, or I have a lived experience of whatever it is you need it as a company or as a corporation or as an individual. Okay, I'll give you 6 hours of my expertise a day. I need to live. You're going to pay me for that. But if we could see things as an exchange in value as opposed to a power structure, that will go a long way. And that's a tip if anyone's listening, or if they want to share this with companies, with bosses, with CEOs. Be inquisitive, ask the questions, understand that you are extracting value from people and you're giving value to people. Make that plain, make that practical, and see how it can enrich your business. Again, reading all these companies, and the majority of the companies in the article I shared were in Europe and in South America. I noticed that when I was reading that. So Libby, you're talking about in America, North America and the United States, we don't see that a lot. But a lot of these companies have more diverse individuals when it comes to abilities. Now, one thing I didn't see was like a lot of racial differences and diversity. But yeah, I'm gonna be quiet now.
No, I think you bring a good point, is that the intersection between race and disability is still also something that we're lacking in the United States, and in our workplaces. And what's interesting is that there's a lot to learn and enrich yourself with if you make yourself and your workspaces inclusive from a disability standpoint and a racial standpoint. And I think that that is so powerful and so under realized, that individuals who are both maybe in the minority and in multiple ways can bring those two intersections together to help your workplace flourish and grow, because experience is what makes life rich.
Absolutely. Thanks, Libby, for that. I know, April, I know we started to bring this conversation up based off of an article that you had shared with the group. And so I wanted you to kind of just bring that, information a little bit to the conversation, so that we can kind of use this last half of it to really kind of break down what the information of the article shared.
Yeah, and Marissa, we always say her name to our audience, and they're like, "Who is she?" She's going to drop the article in the link, and I am currently on my laptop trying to pull it up, but
Up.
Apple Store.
I moved too fast. Wesley moving fast. Well,
but the article talks about, and we'll drop it in the link so people can share, but it was a real wonderful article on how disability in the workplace gave companies a more competitive advantage. And I think that was literally in the title. And in reading it, it did like a real in-depth study of companies who had like a pretty significant disabled workforce and how those companies were really thriving. So that the one example I gave of my own personal experience, that was in the article as well, where, some people are very hyper focused on a particular, when we talk about strengths, people have particular strengths. And so they were able to come into companies and utilize that strength. And that really helped the companies thrive in that area. So like a lot of tech companies, come on, a lot of tech companies are really able to hire people that are highly intuitive, really able to understand code and to engineer and whatnot. And really, when the pandemic hit, this whole remote hybrid working situation is what so many people have been asking for.
Yep.
People with disabilities have been asking for that. So instead of having to get up and spend literally like 2 hours getting ready, an hour trying to, get transportation to wherever, they're able to have access to their needs at home and get on the computer. Recently, a lot of companies are like, hey, let's come back to work. This isn't in the article, but it's showing percentages of people of color feeling safer and more comfortable working from home. I don't have to walk into an office and somebody say, oh, what's wrong with your hair today? Or that's interesting. Like, why'd you wear that necklace? Or why is your hair like this? And, my own personal experience, when we had Black Lives Matter or something happens within the Black community, I was going into work in tears, in fear of my children's lives and what could happen to me, and me being the only Black person in a company of 100-something people. Nobody else. They're like, what's wrong with you? You know? So, but that's what the article was bringing up. And once Marissa drops it and I pull it up, I'll give you all the title. But a competitive advantage is given to companies who have a more diverse workforce, especially when we focus on having people with disabilities.
Well, and I think you are absolutely right, April, in the article, in the saying that it's more competitive now because individuals with disabilities have been allowed and given the key to open the door to being able to contribute their skills and their talents in the virtual environment in the workplace, because that from personal experience matters. I went from working in a physical office space to now in my new position, I work in a remote uh, work from home situation. And that was to better meet my needs as a person who lives with a disability. I made that choice to find a remote position that I could feel more capable and functional to be more present with my coworkers and to be more active in the conversation and the productivity. And I think that with this back and forth push of we need to get back into the office spaces doesn't show much understanding and compassion and empathy for the experiences that we've all in as a society have endured in the last 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Where is that togetherness?
Mhm.
Like we're in this together mindset going. We're going backwards
Ooh,
instead of forwards.
yes. I feel like Wes has been talking about this a lot recently too. Um,
No, seriously. I wanted to share like a couple notes that I ran through about inclusive workspaces. It says where diversity is recognized, valued, and integrated into every aspect of the organization, offers benefits not only for the employees but also for the business as a whole. And so when you are making workspaces inclusive, you're bringing so much value. But to make it like inclusive on a disability level, um, it too not only like as it brings that extra innovation, I think that you don't have a hard time making things inclusive when you include the people and the voices that actually can help. Because as you know, if you have a whole group, I want to use a personal experience, but I was talking to a company recently, and they're a whole group of individuals with disabilities, and they're leading and they're doing a great job with the work that they're doing. But one of their barriers was how do we reach the Black community with this particular disability?
mm,
And and of course they're talking to me for some consulting and trying to get some ideas. And anyway, my question to them was, I said, all right, well, hold on, let's take it back a little bit. I said, let's take it back and let's see, because your question, one, you represent this disability, you're providing services and resources, and your question to me is, how do we get more Black people to be a part of this and get our resources? So my question was, well, how many Black people are on your team? And again, if it's all disability led, then you know how diverse it is. And I was like, oh well, I'll tell you the truth. Well, it's like it's not really diverse. It's just majority all white guys and things like that. And I was like, that's fine, because that's who you've been serving in a demographic. But if you want to expand your demographic and you want to go tap into other sectors, you need that representation, that visibility that's outside of just the language that you're using. And I think that that's important for people to understand too, is that there are services and resources out there, but that doesn't reach the full demographic that you're speaking on, because you don't have that diversity within the leadership roles. You don't have that diversity. So people that are struggling with inclusivity and diversity in their business is because you haven't taken away your pride to include people of diversity and of inclusive backgrounds into the leadership roles to become a voice. And most people don't need to be down below the top voice, right? Like I've been reached out, and I don't mind being an advocate of a lot of things, and I'm on a lot of different boards and things like that. So I take pride of that. But I do feel that sometimes there has been areas where people have came and kind of like Libby, you were saying, like it kind of takes away, like they give you like like, oh, for example, instead of having you as a board member, I'm gonna make you part of our advisory board. And but to me, it's like that's only helping the top still make the decision, but someone with this disability should be in that part too, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so just using that as an example of where certain things stop, and you're not giving people a full ability to create change if you're not putting them with the change makers, and then you're not allowing change to happen if you're not including anyone different into the areas where the change is supposed to be created.
Right.
So I think that it is very important to not only make things diverse and inclusive and have your language and your, the accessibility, but it's also just include people that are different than you, include voices so that you can be so valuable to so many different groups, if that's the language you're using. And I feel like right now everyone's using it like it's a token, when and so the fact that everyone's using it is in mission statements and everything since past 2020. I think that no one should not be a part of anything. Like I think everyone around in America should, if you should understand what races, religions, cultures are here, and then you should find a way to embed them into your organization in some way. And even as me as a founder, I've learned year after year of how to try to do that the best way possible, and I'm always trying to learn. So again, I'm not even saying that like I'm just as perfect in these practices as I want to be, but I always feel that you can be more effective by the knowledge that you know. And I know that the only way you create change is including everyone that you're trying to create change for, because you can't make an impact and a solution for a community you don't have knowledge of.
There you go.
Yep.
I have a question for you both, and I could even chime in. Can you give an example of a work situation where you have been invited to the table, included, you felt seen, and you see how it was a bit of an advantage for an organization or company?
I'll let you go first, Libby.
I ain't seen it. I'm curious to know.
Well, first you said something, Wes, before I answer April's question that struck me about being a token.
Mhm.
And I think that is also something that is so widely prevalent in the community of being segregated and tokenized because we have a disability and because we're a part of a racial minority.
Oof, yes.
And that is the other epidemic that we always have to fight up against. I walk into a room or roll into a room and I see that I am the only female Asian person with a disability. That sends a message and says that I am here to check a box.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's not okay, because we want to be recognized for what we bring to the table and not necessarily because the color of our skin or the fact that we have a disability. We want to be acknowledged and our experience and learning and growing, we want the same rights and responsibilities as our counterparts who are Caucasian.
Absolutely.
And so I think what also, getting to April's question, I think that the recognizing that you need to invite and have spaces be diverse in not just disability, but in uh, racial equity as well. I think the best experience that I have had is with Open Up. I've been on boards left and right and things, and it becomes obvious sometimes that I'm there because, not just because I'm a woman and have professional experience, but because I'm the minority person.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came to Open Up, it was amazing to not just be asked about my professional experience, but to be in a room of diversity and equity,
Mhm.
and it be honest and true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I feel that. I feel that. Shout out to Open Up, everybody. Um, Open Up gives us all the love. I mean, I've been part of this group for, I mean, look, I mean, this was before we did, 32 episodes. It's been a lot. So we've been hanging since 20, when, April?
2021.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, like, and honestly, it's just, and even my experience of coming last year of just hanging around, the environment is welcoming, the awareness is beautiful, the constant wanting to learn and just be an open book. I think that is where, at least that's what really struck me, of what Open Up has done. So, but I thank you for sharing that, Libby, because that even gives, we don't really talk about the orgs as much around like here as when we should, but you're a person with a different experience. And so to be able to share that is important for everyone. So I hope Marissa's back there smile. April, like, ooh, like Libby's like answer was so hard because I'm like, have I ever been in it? Okay, anyway, like I
That's
feel
true. Like if you haven't, you have.
no, I feel like I've definitely been in spaces where there has been celebration and there has been success and the opportunities of me being able to bring my true self. Say for instance, like through some advocacy work, just social media wise, and talking about accessibility and like the need of like how the hospitality industry has a lot of barriers, but highlighting roll-in showers and things. There's a complex, a newly built complex, actually, Black-owned complex, which made me really excited because they took the awareness and reached out to me and said that they took, some insight from what I had been posting and things and kind of structured their new like apartments to be more accessible and things. And I went into them and they were really accessible. They had like a rolling shower in like almost every unit, like, with a bench. And it was just the little things, but it was where I did see wins. But I would like to share, like, there has been times where, I thought that there was wins. I've worked with large government sectors, within Kansas City, and we've made big improvements, right? But no credit was given, or the lack of support was still shared, or, the whole project just went kind of pushed out, after funds were accumulated for that project, right? Like, had my insight, my input, created a dope development, they got funding for it, and then just pushed everybody out the way. Like, I've had those experiences, and I just wanted to share that because there are times where you are brought in to bring your insight, and there is improvement happening.
Mhm.
But for it to be on a larger scale, sometimes it doesn't get to that point. And I was just able to bear witness to that. And so I'm definitely proud of being able to be in spaces. But I mean, of course, like even like gyms, right? Like, so you see, like I've tried, or at least started, we started like our own gym in April, with our org, and our goal is to try to expand, get a larger space. But it was to make it more inclusive, and really use that information that most people take and just put in a book and
Yep.
sit to the side and say, oh, we'll make those improvements later, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, no, let's just do it now because we exist today.
Right.
You know, we're not creating something for a culture of people or
No.
community of people that's coming later on, right? Like these
Yeah.
individuals are here every day, and we have to create solutions and impact for them now. And so I only share that because, again, like we want to be celebrated. We don't want to feel tolerated. We don't want to feel accommodated, because the accommodation should already be there. The awareness should be there. Universal design is very important to include everybody. You know, making sure that you got access for a wheelchair opens the door for so many more people.
Yep.
You know, like,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so that's kind of where I know I kind of went, but I did have to kind of share the pros and cons of that, because I have had, again, I felt included in spaces, and thought, until I understood what the bare minimum was. And now I'm like, oh, this is not enough. You know what I mean? Like, I shouldn't question your space. I should be just able to embrace it.
And
Yep.
you have to question it. I'm just thinking for all of us, like this, when we talk about safe spaces and we use that jargon, how do you put that into action? And if you do have to use your voice, we would hope that environments are comfortable enough and safe enough where you can say, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel safe here. I don't feel protected here. Or I just feel unease here. And it is because of A, B, C, D, or E. And it be accepted and it be listened to. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I can think of for organizations, for companies, and for people. Create that space, excuse me, so people can come in and say, hey, there's some things that just aren't okay here because I don't have access.
April, I just had to share this. I was with, I spoke at a company, Peckham. I don't know if anyone's heard of them, Peckham. Don't know like the full name, if they have one, whatever, but it's out of Michigan. Great company, hire individuals with disabilities, of all different types of disabilities. And I went into this org, and or this company. Yeah, it was like a breath of fresh air. You
Mm.
know, like, I mean, they put all, I felt like they included everyone and put them in mind, like from race, religion, everything. Like, they had a choir room, they had a meditation room, they had a sensory space. Like, they had a space, like everything had windows to make sure that you didn't feel closed in. Like, I mean, it was just, the design of it was thoughtful, and I name dropped them. As you know, I haven't name dropped any companies,
I was surprised.
but I definitely name dropped them because they made me feel good in there. They really took in, just my needs, just as a speaker, but then but taking me just on a tour of their space, and just seeing, like, yeah, just seeing individuals with disabilities, but being in a place where they feel welcome to come in and work. And they have all these different areas where, if you got this going on, you're welcome to go here. If you need to take a break, if you got to pray, like, they had wash stations for people, at lower level. I mean, it was just, I'm like, does this even exist anywhere else? Right? Like,
Yeah.
so, I mean, again, I love to celebrate that experience, because there are people doing the work. It's just that there's models that no one's trying to repeat. And sometimes the template's already out there. If you just go out there and find the companies, it's probably in a Google search, but people don't do that. So,
Well, I'm going to be sure to highlight that. I'll text you, Wes, to get the name of the company, and we'll put that in our newsletter, because that is kind of why I asked that question too. Because Libby and I had spoken before about positive experiences that she's had. And even if the positive experience is like, I started my own, like for me, I branched out to be on my own because I felt safer and I felt more comfortable and I was able to do more things, have more autonomy. We don't all have the privilege to be able to do that. And so it's really, again, incumbent on people who are allies and, like you said, companies who are modeling this and not putting the work on us.
Yeah.
Like everybody
Yeah.
said, Libby.
Yeah. I think, well, and April, you just brought up a good point, is that it needs to be a collective effort, not just, oh, you're the one with the problem or you're the one with the need, so you're the one who has to figure it out.
There you go, Libby. Ooh, amen.
It's like Libby, like it's like following somebody in a busy place for them to show you where like the door is, and they're looking at you to tell them. I'm like, you got the bird's eye view. Like I could tell you that I need the door that has the width and everything, but you got to see it through. You know what I mean? And that's really our experiences. It's like people like, oh, but you're the one that's show me, and I'm like, how I'm gonna show you? It's all these people in front of me. It's a bit anyway. Yeah, like we can't just be the ones to lead. We need other people to help us do that because we understand our limits, and so we also know our value. But also, but for us, our minds, I feel like, are inclusive in many ways because we know that we have to embrace other people to help things get done, right? Like,
yeah.
And when you look at it from the other side, people are like, oh, what can I do with you? And it's like you can do everything, right? Like you can do everything. You don't know what I could come in and do because I think I just made a post about that. Like my physical limitations does not limit things, and as April shared, about individuals that might have autism or something, like learning their talents. I just did a workshop in LA. It's called Fashion Honors Autism, and guy came from Kansas City, and his goal is just helping with confidence. And there was one individual, and we all knew, like, he was just older. He was like, oh, I know my lane, right? So I'm gonna do this, but I know my lane. And he wants to be a critic. And I thought it was just so cool. So we got into like this room for an interview, and the whole time he just kind of just was like, I'm here to do this, but I know my lane, right? And so they was like, well, tell us about your passion. And y'all, when I tell you that it blew me away, like the presentation, like he even sold himself. Like, if you need me to do this and that, like it was so good. And the only thing that I thought was that if there wasn't openness to embrace who he was and just try to push this on him, then you would have limited who he could actually bring out and what that value could have been to everyone around. And it was just so valuable. And I think we all just kind of just like soaked in, like, because all the whole time he's like, this is who I am, right? Like, and so they was like, we're gonna wait to the end, but you're gonna be able to share and you're gonna be able to feel free with it. And he was just freely giving it. And I just wanted to share that. It's like, don't limit yourself by what you see from people based off of your perception if you haven't talked to them, if you haven't embraced who they are, in any source of like communication, right? Like in any way. Like, as Libby might have shared earlier, most people judge you based off of what they see. And so they never go further than that. And it's going further than that, right? Like that extra mile, like that you get to embrace, and everything in your world can change.
Yeah, I love that. We're coming to the end of our hour, which we always think is like too short. Libby, so happy you're on, right? We've been talking about getting you on for
since the deadly rains.
Since the deadly rain, everyone really tried. It was July, and we just had in Pittsburgh the celebration where Libby spoke 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Literally almost got blown away. Literally. This year she was able to speak and no winds blew her away.
Yes.
No rain. But go to Open Up website, everyone, to check it out if you want to see excerpts from her. Wes, you on our prep call, everybody, before I kept dropping out, we had a good prep call. You had a good summary of all the wonderful things that are happening. So can you break it down for everybody, like what each month holds in space?
All right. So don't knock my lack of knowledge as I'm trying to get more knowledge. Oh, look at that. Anyway. But you can do a simple Google search, first of all, and just look at whatever months, whatever disabilities are represented in each month, or any days that represent disability going on to the end of the year. But from my knowledge of what I do know is that September is Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and I think December 2nd or December 3rd is International Disability Day. And so, again, there are so many more days within this last 5 months or whatever we have. And so please just do your research. But from my knowledge, those are the ones that really just come first to mind. And so, yeah, just, hey, I need to see some spinal cord injury awareness, accessibility awareness, at least for September, if you want to be more inclusive, because if you serve me, then you're serving so many other people that use a wheelchair. So let's get it going, y'all. We can help everybody by helping everybody, right?
Libby, do you have anything you'd like to share in closing statements?
So I think disability in representation is so important, and also is something that we don't just need a day for. We can celebrate it all year long. And I think that is going forward, is a part of the movement, is that disability needs to be celebrated every day, not just in a certain month or a certain year. It needs to be every day, because it is a life experience, and everybody at one time or another will incur something that gives them the quote unquote label of disability.
I wish we could share Kevin Hart's video right now. I don't know if y'all seen it. Just the last few days, he did a video because he tore all this stuff, said he couldn't walk, whatever, in a wheelchair. But just like what Libby said, like, it's just at some point. And so rather you're someone that has a large platform that can kind of make it funny, which I have so many thoughts about that. But at the same time, you did experience, right? And you're just sharing that now this is your thought process to that experience. So how do we create a new thought process to the experiences that you might have if you haven't experienced it already?
Yep, right. I love that. Thank you, Libby. And
Libby,
I want to come back because this intersectionality, like there's so much going on in the world. We talk about affirmative action. When we talk about, intersectionality and race, I would love to come on and have a wonderful conversation about the model minority when we talk about our Asian community and the conflicts that have come about between the Black community and Asian community, and how it's all come from the white supremacist cultural thing. I think this is what's so important. And although Sunday Safe Spaces, we've centered things around the intersectionality of African American or Black diaspora and disability, it's because when we focus on, I don't want to say the lowest, but the most extreme forms of racism and ableism or whatnot, it blossoms and it affects everyone else, right? And like Libby, you said, I've been the only Asian woman in a wheelchair in a room, and the pressure that is put upon you and society as a whole is so important to amplify and look at. So we welcome you back.
I would be happy to come back and talk to you. This has been such a fun morning.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, you have a great day. Everybody, thank you so much. Thank y'all for the comments on LinkedIn and all the other platforms. We truly appreciate your feedback and are grateful for you.
Yes. Have a